Hi, I'm Felicia Jones. I teach kindergarten in Abilene, Texas. I have been using the COVA approach through this program, and I've been teaching for 10 years.
Hi, I'm Monica Zielinski. I am a training coordinator and leader for a hospital system in the Houston area. And I manage a group of trainers who teach everybody in the hospital on how to use the electronic medical record system.
Hi, I'm Meredith Newman, and I teach 6th and 7th grade math. Oh my gosh, sorry, 6th and 7th grade math in Dallas, Texas. And I'm currently using blended learning in the math classroom as my innovation plan, which is some of the stuff that we've learned, I guess, in our program through the COVA approach. So, yes.
I am Brittany Walker, and I teach theater. So I'm a theater director for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in Katy, Texas. And I am currently implementing blended learning from a lot of the things that I've learned in this course. My innovation plan focuses on incorporating blended learning into electives, specifically fine arts.
So we're all doing blended learning, which is really great. It'll help us with this reflection a lot. And we're coming together so we can kind of reflect on the COVA approach, creating these significant learning environments and our innovation plans and how that's worked out through this program. So kind of going around, what part of the program did you realize that you really did kind of have choice in how you created your project, and it was more about what was going to work for you, your choice, your voice, so you could take ownership of this project?
I think for me, the very first course I think that I took with Dr. Thibodeau had us doing the whole growth mindset plan. And I think that was the very first time I've ever been told, hey, you're going to create your own goals and you're going to choose, you know, how you are going to grow. And that was kind of interesting because I'm used to, even in the undergraduate program that I did, like they'd be telling you, you know, your milestones you're going to meet, and they'd be telling you what things you're working towards. And so that was really interesting. And then getting to experience that growth mindset plan, I grew so much more, I feel like, through this program because I got to decide like what specific, you know, avenues of growing I would be doing rather than, you know, just being told and feeling like I begrudgingly had to do it. So that was, I think, in the very first course I took. I know some of you guys might have gone in a different order. I don't know if that was first for you guys, but that was my first time realizing, oh, wow, okay, like I actually get to choose. Cool.
I think I started off doing a lot of the courses just because this was the assignment and completing an assignment. I don't think ownership really kicked in for me until I got to the courses about creating significant learning environments. That was 5313. And then when we got to develop our own online course. So that's when I really was able to apply it authentically to what I was doing. Throughout the course, I've kind of struggled because I'm comparing myself to everybody else in the class. And most of the people are teaching in K through 12 classrooms, and you're teachers and you're teaching, you're teaching children. So your approach is a lot different than me, a leader of a training team that's training adults. So it's not even that I'm in a corporate versus K through 12 education. I'm not even training. I am developing a group of trainers. So coming at it from a manager leadership kind of perspective has been a lot of adjustment for me. I had to learn how to trust myself a lot in what my thoughts and decisions were because I couldn't necessarily compare them to what everybody else was doing.
Yeah, I can see how that would be difficult, just mainly because you are with educators a lot and trying to figure out where your What path is yours versus
Right.
theirs?
Yeah, it took a little while, but I think I definitely have a better grasp of it now.
Yeah. Brittany, did you kind of recall when you realized that this could really be about you and some changes you wanted to make?
From day one, I think I've been really fortunate to kind of have a full circle moment throughout this program. I started my first course with Dr. H, and he's teaching my last course. And so being in his class, I did 5305, Disruptive Innovation in Technology.
We were probably in that together, Brittany.
I believe we were. And that was the first time that I realized that, like, or at least felt that I didn't know what I was doing. I thought that all this time I'd always wanted like the opportunity to do what I wanted to do and like, let me lead the way and let me lead my charge. And then we got in the class with Dr. H, and I realized I was waiting for a checklist. I was so used to being micromanaged in my last school district and being told like, this is what you need to do. This is when it needs to be done. And you do it A, B, C, D. And so when he gave us our first assignment, he was just like, okay, go. And I was like, well, what else? And that's when I realized like, wait, like I actually have like a say so. I have a choice, and I can do what I like want to do, like truly. And I realized that it terrified me because I didn't know how to do that. And so this program has really taught me how to take charge in what I'm doing in my classroom. Because I realized that even though I wanted it, I didn't know how. So I realized it from day one.
And I was in that, I'm pretty sure I was in that class with you that started in August of 5305 with Dr. H.
Yes.
And I remember these conversations, like in those meetings, like, and us staying and waiting and asking like, so what do you want us to do? How do you want us to do it? What needs to be turned in? We had the conversations about whether video or written. Yeah, I actually am on that discussion board now and can see like some of our questions we had. That was the busiest student lounge I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Because we're in there constantly like, okay, what do y'all think about this? Does it, because there was, you want to say there was no direction, but there was direction, just not direction.
Not what we were used to. It's not what we were used to. And a lot of us, you're right. Like when we would get into our small groups, he'd break us into the breakout rooms and we'd be like, okay, are you freaked out like I'm freaked out? Like I remember that. We would like we kind of all needed to lean on each other. And that's definitely when I realized like I actually have a say so and I actually have a choice. He is the person that opened my mind to that. And I told him in our meeting last week, like, I appreciate you so much for that.
Well, and for me, I'm kind of always been kind of a rock the boat kind of person, going and figuring out, like that's just me and my personality. So like my classroom has always been built on choice and doing some, now this has made me look a little deeper into how authentic those choices were. And so I've dug real deep into making it more authentic. And adding the voice option, like I've always given my kids voice in what we do in the class, but for kindergarten, it's not just giving them the voice, it's teaching them how to use that. And so that's another thing we've really incorporated into my blended learning is finding ways to teach them how to use their voices, because their brain is still in a mindset where they are authority pleasers and they haven't developed into peer pleasers yet, which I am thankful for. But with that being said, they want to tell you what they think is right, kind of like we did. They just want you to like what they did. They want to tell you what you think is right, or what they think you think is right, so that they have your approval. I know, Brittany, we had talked about like the shock and needing to lean on each other. Meredith and Monica, how did you react to that when you kind of figured out, oh, there's not a list, there's not a checklist, and I've got to take this thing kind of by the reins and run with it? What was fear, panic, like uncertainty, or were you like ready to go with it?
I think for me, it was a little bit overwhelming at first, but, and it made me realize it was going to be more time consuming because I actually got to choose and I got to make those choices. And I wasn't just told you're using this specific program to do this specific thing in this specific way. But I feel like, you know, getting to experience it as a kind of student, it really helped me understand how my students would feel, you know, with the tables turned whenever you start really trying to implement, you know, the COVA approach in your classroom. And so it was kind of nice to be on the other side of it, just as a reminder, you know, this is what our kids are going to feel like when we start trying to give them authentic activities. And this is what it's going to feel like when we want them to use their voice specifically and their special skills specifically. And we want to give them choice and, you know, support them in having ownership and feeling like they really got to make decisions about, you know, their projects or what they did in class. So it was interesting.
No,
But
I
I feel
mean,
like it ended up being good. So
and I'll add that us knowing what they'll feel like, if, especially if they've gone through an entire system school career of never having that, of always being given that checklist of what needs to be done, and this is passing and this is not passing, and this is how many you have to get right and this is how many you get wrong, and moving away from that, like most of them are never going to have had a teacher that does that or functions in that manner. So they're going to have a lot of the same feelings that we're going to have. And again, their brains are less developed for that. So really kind of pushing them to do that. How about you, Monica, with adults and not having children? What was your first thoughts? Did you feel like you were ready for it?
So just applying it to me as a learner, no, I wasn't ready. And as a leader of the team, there are definitely some areas that I've made recommendations for, and I often send, you know, emails that have various research articles or suggestions or Pinterest posts or, you know, things like that that will help the trainers in their classroom on how to use Zoom, a Zoom webinar that comes up, or a better way to record a video for a demo video, things like that. So I'm often trying to provide as much education to the team as possible. So that's something that I've always done, but actually putting some kind of structure around it and trusting that what I'm putting out there is valuable, that was the biggest struggle. Like I struggled with, where do I start? And why is it that what I have to say is valuable enough for somebody else to take on, if that makes any sense?
I think that was the hardest part for me.
Yes. That,
like, out of all of it, like I had the ideas for the innovation plan already. I knew how I wanted to implement with my students and where I wanted to start with them. I knew what like I had already analyzed that, because I can overanalyze anything. But when I think my turning point and the thing that made me really doubt myself the most was writing the paper that they asked us to consider submitting for publication. Was that submit this for other, why would they want to read what I wrote? And I think part of that's being a teacher. I think a lot of times teachers in our profession were just invalidated in our thoughts and our opinions of our students.
Yeah.
Every day.
So we're always told, and we just kind of walk around going, well, we don't know what we're doing, because everyone else tells us we don't know what we're doing. And I think that's a reflection onto how we approach this class too.
Absolutely.
and
Alicia, I would love to read what you wrote now. I'm like,
Yeah, I want to read
so
it too.
curious. Need to
Y'all are
find
like,
that
we should have been in a group last class.
Dang.
I mean, I'll
we're in a
send
group
it.
now, so you got to share.
It's a Google Drive. I didn't publish it on my website because
Okay.
I'm still kind of, but I'll send it. I don't mind.
Oh yeah, technically you can't publish it on your website, right?
Yeah, I can't put it on my
publish
website.
there.
I'm still
There we
considering
go. That makes
publication,
sense.
but
Yes, that's right.
so I was already kind of adjusted to that style of learning. But how did you guys adjust? Like, what is there any steps you took along the way? Because if someone were to take this class and like start this program, What would you tell them? What made the adjustment into the COVA style? What's made that easiest for you?
Well,
Or
for
what would you
me-
go back and do differently from the beginning if you knew then what you know now?
Well, like I said before, the biggest adjustment for me was trusting myself and what my understanding of the ask was and how I authentically apply it to my situation. That was the biggest adjustment I had to make. Just developing that trust in myself. I really had to rely on my situation and what I was putting out there and who my audience was. Because I kept readjusting, or I kept thinking about my audience as what we call the end user.
Yeah.
But that isn't my audience. My audience is not the end user. My audience are the trainers.
And then
So-
their audience is the end user.
And their audience is the end user. So that again, I overthinking the situation, just it kind of crippled me in a lot of instances. And I had a lot of delays in turning items in because I kept overthinking it. I really had to kind of really focus on what was authentic to my situation and just trust in what I was designing for that situation. And it always ended up being a lot simpler than what I kept overthinking in my head. My responses in the end didn't require as much effort when I kept it to what was true to my situation.
Yeah. Meredith, how about you? How did you kind of adjust to this?
Well, for
New
me, sorry, I
style.
keep going back to growth mindset, but it's because I remember the first time I heard about growth mindset, I'm like, that sounds hokey. That sounds ridiculous. Like, that's the trend. Got it. Now I can move on. But I think like that was one of the big things that really, really stood out to me because this is my 4th year teaching. And so it's my 2nd year teaching 6th and 7th grade math. And I taught 5th grade math before that. And my undergraduate degree is in middle grades mathematics education. And so it was like, how have I not heard more about the research behind the growth mindset and how that can affect so much in my mathematics classroom specifically? And so I think really, being okay with, learning about something new and, learning how to learn and learning how to fail and learning that it's okay to fail and okay, to not know things. And just really having to experience that kind of helped me recognize the value that would have on my students and all of that. So I think really the growth mindset and the growth mindset plan was really what kicked it off for me. I think our courses went in a different order than, or my course went in a different order than you guys, because I started later and then I took off like several months. And then now I hop back in, I think in the middle of, 5305 rather than starting with 5305. But yeah, I think just buying into the growth mindset sooner would have been helpful. That actually ended up being what my course, my virtual course ended up being over growth mindset, ended up using it with my students. And so it was valuable. And I felt like it was helpful to help them really understand how valuable their voices are. And,
So that
really
changed your
promote.
teaching, like in your classroom?
Yes, it changed my teaching completely. I believed, everyone can learn, but I think teaching kids that, we can listen to the voice inside our head and we can recognize when we're being negative and we can recognize, when we're feeling more positive. And it's good for us to reflect on those feelings and to think about those feelings and then come up with a plan to help us, either get more positive or get help or, that sort of thing. So, learning how to kind of do that processing and recognizing emotions and, honestly, the social emotional learning that goes along with the growth mindset.
Which is why I asked, because growth mindset's been big at my school for quite a few years. And we also do Stephen Covey's 7 Habits with our students. So they do 7 Habits of Healthy and Happy Kids. So kind of all that was very familiar to me. Like I clicked in that class and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. We're doing growth mindset. Done. Like I'm good. I'm just gonna, like, I've already got all these things. But for me, the biggest thing that clicked was giving my students the freedom to be wrong and make errors, especially in math, because that's when I learned how to actually do math, and the hard math was when I was actually in a job and I would do my math and there was no one to guide me through it. And I would have to send it to a checker, and then the checker would come back and go, these are the things I found wrong. And I'd have to go figure out why they were wrong. So that's like, that was a huge thing for me that I figured out then, that I've brought into my classroom, is it's okay to be wrong. This is not you passing. This is not you failing, especially when we're practicing or stations or whatever. It's okay to be wrong. So I want you to be wrong. I don't want you to be right all the time, because if you're right all the time, you're not learning anything new.
Yes.
And giving them the freedom to do that is number one. It's very hard for them to accept.
Yes.
They have a very hard time accepting that. How, Monica, have you noticed, like, since you get to work with adults, are they any better with it? Like giving them the opportunity to be wrong, or ask questions, or not know how to do things?
The hardest part in going back, remembering when I taught middle school, the hardest part is anybody asking for help or anybody saying that I don't understand. It's especially hard, I feel, for adults, because they're in this mandatory training session, as every adult has been in, and all you want to do is get it over with.
I thought the last time we talked, you said something that cracked me up, that your like nursing assistants accepted the training easier than your doctors and surgeons.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know if it's necessarily the more education you have, or if it's just the more experience that you have. You don't do the things that are necessarily expected of you in your position, especially I guess administrative functions, which is what the medical record system is. It's very administrative tracking. So yes, it just understanding that, there's that struggle with getting people to say that they're not understanding, or that they do need help in some aspect. They wait until they fail, and even then they don't say anything, because we give people multiple opportunities to succeed on a exam at the end, which is required for their access, and they don't say anything until they have no more opportunities to fail.
Oh no.
And then they have to say something, because they have to pass it. So that's I think the biggest struggle is that, and again, I think it's any human being. Nobody wants to say that they need help. Nobody wants to ask for that assistance. And that's why I think it's great that if more instruction of that growth mindset can be imposed early on, that it would just make things better all along. I mean, they'll just grow into adults that understand it's okay to fail. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay. It's okay.
And I kind of like, I guarantee we all know 20 and 30-year teachers that refuse to change or accept advice, and part of that is, I think part of that's experience. I've been doing this long. It's not broken. Why fix it? Part of it's education level. I have my doctorate, my master's, whatever in this field, and you can't tell me something I don't already know. Or this doesn't work for me, and just kind of a refusal to even try. So I think that's kind of across all the professions. So has anyone loved the idea of going to the faculty to say, hey, let's make a change.
No. I feel like changes in education are rough, especially like right whenever we were starting our program or doing our program, like with the pandemic. We had already thrown like 500 changes at everyone. Like we finally, switched from Seesaw to Google Classroom. And like, since
ours was the opposite way. We switched from Google Classroom for the littles into Seesaw because Google Classroom was more, it was more difficult for the littles.
So they were losing their minds about that. And because I had done the Google level 1 and level 2 certifications through my growth mindset plan, I like ended up knowing about it. And it was so hard to help people. Like they just were so exhausted by changes and all the changes. And I think if anything to me that has stood out about like all the changes in the past year, it's that like you really need to find, I think it was in 40 or influencer, maybe it talked about, finding the influencers.
Yes, the 40X and the influencers.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like find those people who influence everyone. And that's who you need to get on board, because otherwise there is no like convincing anyone of doing anything new and getting people, getting people's buy-in until you get their opinion shared. But then also you get those, people who have that strong pull on everyone's kind of personal feelings and leadership.
And Brittany, I bet you had some extra challenges as the fine arts electives teacher rather than one of the important core instruction teachers. And I say that facetiously because you guys are just as important as everyone else. I am a theater kid. I was in band. I did drama, and I tell you right now, like the things that drive me and move me forward and the things that I love to do all derive from, and the part of the reason I am the way I am and can do the things I do and speak the way I speak was my theater. Like I can speak loud, I can project my voice, I can pretend I know how to sing even though I can't. I can go to somebody that is more educated with my research and have a full-on debate over what is best for my kids. I picked up learning how to play the piano last week, and I'm already at 2 hands because of my music background. Like there's so many things that are different aspects of my personality that came from fine arts. So when I say that you are not important because you're not a core teacher, that is completely facetious and sarcastic, because I have very few memories of teachers because ADHD and it just doesn't like to hold memories. And the one teacher I can remember is my high school theater teacher. And that's literally the only one. So you are super important.
But no, what you're saying is like absolutely right. It's been really, really hard because nobody wants to listen to the electives teacher. Because we are considered like not important. They know that our kids like our classes. They know that we're culture cultivators. But when it comes to like what we have to say, we're just kind of like the ugly like stepchild of the school. And so when it came to me like kind of approaching the leadership at my school about this, they were like, okay, so you can do this with the other electives teachers. And let's see how that goes. And so my innovation plan started with me only talking to electives teachers. Like they didn't even want me to waste the math teacher's time. They didn't want me to waste the ELA teacher's time. And I had to kind of prove that this worked through an electives course, which is what my entire innovation plan is about. But no, there were a lot of challenges because people don't take us serious in the school at all. That's the crazy thing, or the bad thing about it is that mindset and that attitude trickles down to the students. And so you'll have the students who will say, it doesn't matter if I do my work in this class. Everybody knows that this credit doesn't count, and so it's like, who told you that? Who told you that? Yeah. I have to remind them all the time, my F is the same as the math teacher's F. My F is going to get you ineligible just like the ELA teacher's F.
Yes,
and so I did have a lot of challenges, but what I will say is that what kind of helped me was practicing what I preach to my students. I have to like help them gain their confidence every day and remind them of how great they are and how the choices that they make are amazing. And then I realized that apparently I didn't think that about my own choices. And I tell them all the time, you know, you got to fail fast, fail forward, fail frequently. And when I got into this program, I was like, but wait, I don't want to fail. I don't want to go through that. And so it was me having to take a step back and say, wait, you have got to practice what you preach. You cannot expect your students to do it if you don't do it. And that's when I felt like I really started to thrive, and things started to make sense and things started to click and connect, because I finally said, you know what, I have to do the same things. I tell my students all the time, like, your process is more important than your product. And it's all in the effort that you put into it and what you learned from the mistakes that you made. And so that's what I've taken here, and allowing myself to say, okay, I'm going to write this wrong and I'm going to put it in the discussion board and let people tear it apart or tell me things. And, you know, I teach them to take feedback really graciously. And I thought I took feedback well until I got into this course. And then all of a sudden it was like, well, I don't want you to tell me my paper wasn't good. I've written 3 literature reviews. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it was definitely practicing what I preach. But I have grown so much, and everything has changed in the way that I talk to my kids, the way that I teach my kids. And it's like I was already doing it, but now I'm doing it at like this higher level. Like I'm up here when it comes to what I'm teaching my kids and what I'm allowing them to do. I've changed the way I grade. It's not always this is wrong, so it's a failing grade. It's, well, what did you do to get there? Let's talk about that process. I grade them on their process now. I don't grade them on what they gave me. I grade them on the process and what they learned to get there.
I think that's huge for math too, Meredith. Like, as you're coming through, is looking at the process of how they got where they got.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And valuing the process and the different processes to get to the answer, and, you know, evaluating the process and learning from each other's processes and seeing that there's, you know, many different ways to solve a math problem. There's many different ways to get to, you know, success or figure out how to learn something. So
Right. I just wanted to say real quick, I feel like you guys made some points earlier about just promoting the change in the organizations. And I feel like that's the biggest struggle when it comes to implementing or utilizing COVA and creating significant learning environments, is promoting this change in our organizations. I feel that, and I think you've all kind of talked about how you have that lack of empowerment. And this happens, you know, across the board on the corporate level too. There's this lack of empowerment, even though there are research-backed strategies and ways of moving forward, there's just that lack of empowerment to utilize those. And I know it's been a while since I've been in education, but on a corporate level, leaders seem to focus on what the competitors are doing versus what the research supports. And if a competitor is doing something, then that's really where they're going to focus and where they're going to push to have things done. So that is just, you know, some of the things I think where COVA and creating these significant learning environments, we have obstacles implementing them, you know, with fidelity.
I agree. Like for me,